Hello there, I'm George Hall, and welcome back to another episode of the Good Growth Podcast. I'm joined today by Sophie Lawrence Teale, Good Growth Strategy Director, who joined me last week for a few days in the capital. We were at London Tech Week 2023, soaking up the sunshine, the excitement and the insight that the event had to offer. We heard from business leaders, politicians, inventors, policymakers, and even former footballers turned entrepreneurs. Sophie, a fantastic event, wasn't it? Really good.
It was super exciting. It was pretty cool to be rubbing shoulders with the Prime Minister and kind of key people like that. And just to get so many different ideas and kind of entrepreneurs and innovators all in one room, even though it was slightly hot. It was, yeah.
I do think the aircon might need fixing for next year, or at least changing up a little bit. But no, brilliant to hear from everybody, and as you said, a brilliant event. Now that we've had time to digest everything and take stock of what we heard, I understand you've pulled out 3 key themes that are particularly relevant for good growth and also for our clients. Is that right?
Yeah, there were some really exciting themes that came out of it that left me feeling super excited and kind of enthused for what Good Growth are doing at the moment. I think also, if you think about technology and innovation and digital transformation, they're potentially quite scary words to some people, but always on the agenda, always being discussed in the boardroom. So yeah, there were some really interesting themes in terms of people's priorities and where to focus energy, particularly in challenging times when it comes to the economic climate and things like that. Less exciting things.
Perfect. So number one, kicking us off with those key themes that you've pulled out. I understand the first one is around. I mean, we just spoke about priorities there, but legacy tech, which is something that's obviously hugely important to good growth and something that should be very, very important to businesses.
Yeah, I think one of the key things that I took away, obviously I'm not a particularly techie person, but I think one of the key things that I took away or that I learned is that digital transformation and innovation and technology and all of these terms like AI and machine learning and generative AI don't actually have to be quite as scary as they may sound. And that actually a lot of innovation can happen within your existing operating systems and kind of existing technology. So I really enjoy the thought of that and kind of breathing life into what you've already got. Because if you think about, I'm going to sound old now, but if you think about some of the key retailers that have been trading online for 20 plus years, that's a lot of technology and a lot of kind of moving parts layered on top of each other. So the thought of kind of having to keep up, if you like, with new audiences and having to kind of rebuild and restructure not only sounds scary in terms of resources, but also in terms of budgets. So I think I really, really enjoyed a lot of the discussion around kind of breathing life back into legacy tech, because that's exactly what Good Growth are all about. We're about, we see legacy tech as an opportunity and as an asset. So yeah, that element left me feeling really positive, and I thought was a really great move.
We mentioned there that they're quite scary words, aren't they? I mean, it does seem like in tech every single week there's some newfangled buzzword, some newfangled idea that's going to take over the world. Why do you think it is that businesses are so fearful and so anxious about these changes? Is it due to a fear of just change, or is it due to a fear of being left behind compared to competitors? What do you think are the core root issues of that fear and anxiety?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I feel like, obviously, disclaimer, like we can't speak on behalf of all businesses and organizations, but I think there was a really telling fact that came from IBM when they were speaking. They led one of the sessions that AI specifically, only 35% of businesses globally are using AI. So I think in answer to your question, I think it's perhaps that there's so much content and there's so much potential that it's about recognizing what's right for your business, not necessarily worrying about kind of keeping up with the latest technology. If you talk about AI and you talk about digital transformation, it doesn't mean that you have to kind of create your own metaverse or, turn into Amazon. There are simple things that you can do, from even elevating and kind of liberating your teams just to operate a bit smoother and get closer to kind of the human interaction or the creative elements of your business. So I think it's potentially that. I think it's because there's so much. And I wonder if there's often, if you're a CEO and you're running a big organization, obviously there's, budgets aren't necessarily great at the moment. So you need to understand, like, okay, so if I innovate in this area, what's it going to do to my bottom line, and what's it going to mean for my business and the growth of my business? So I feel like maybe that's what's missing. There's more of an understanding that's kind of needed around that. And always going to events like Tech Week, for sure. That definitely helped me to understand. A little plug for Tech Week there.
Sure. I mean, it's good to hear. I mean, that 35% figure is quite staggering, isn't it? I mean, it's a situation where you think everybody's talking about it, so everybody's doing it, everybody must be involved somehow.
Sorry, I was going to say, it's mad when you think about that, because actually on the other end of the scale, in terms of kind of AI, machine learning, technology, all of these different terminologies that you hear kind of battered around from a consumer perspective, I think we're all far more advanced than we actually realize that we are. So another really interesting stat that I heard at the event and kind of read about afterwards is that Chat GPT, for example, hit 100 million users in 2 months, whereas comparatively, not picking on them, but comparatively, it took Spotify 5 years to do that. So it just shows like the scale and the pace at which kind of consumers and sort of users are moving, which again could be quite a scary thing for an organization or a business. But we've been using AI, organizations have been using AI, chatbots and things like that for a good few years now. So again, it's not necessarily about doing something super impressive because it sounds really cool. It's about just focusing on what you've got and honing in on your customer and listening to the customer behavior and taking advantage of all these new tools that you've got to get closer to your customer, whether that's responding quicker or getting a better grip of data, or actually, creative teams being freed up to do just that, to create. Because, I read that, I think it's the Drum that said that we're in this kind of new creative renaissance, which is super interesting given that it's Cannes Lions this week, especially being that, AI and machine learning and all of these different tools actually enable teams to kind of do less of the repetitive kind of tedious work and actually focus on, okay, so, it might be that generative AI can do like 7 different pictures or, of a particular image, different variations of an image. But what is at the center of that image and the kind of the sentiment and the emotive message behind it comes from the humans that are involved. So I think that was, again, a really exciting kind of concept.
Mm-hmm. Well, we spoke then about AI and businesses using AI, and perhaps businesses being a bit unsure about whether it's the right thing to do, whether it's the right time. One of the, refreshing messages that we heard at London Tech Week, and moving on to the second key theme and key takeaway, was this idea that there's no point innovating and diving headfirst into AI unless you've got some resilient, robust data practices in place, and also a good understanding of your data estate. For a business like Good Growth, where data is such an important part of what we do and how we deliver work to clients, it was great to hear, wasn't it?
Yeah, again, yeah, really, really great to hear. And again, I think it's a challenge that's potentially over-engineered and kind of overcomplicated, in that there is so much data, and a lot of the organizations, big global, awesome organizations that we have the privilege of working with, have all of the data but don't necessarily know what to do with it. So yeah, I think you make a really good point. I think it's about getting your house in order and understanding what the data is actually telling you. There's a big difference between what's going on and why it's going on. And I think if you have that understanding and that insight into kind of why your customers are behaving the way that they are, then naturally that should kind of lead into, okay, so here's the opportunities for my organization in particular to take advantage of machine learning or AI or all the various other cool tools that are out there.
I think one thing that we kept hearing was this sort of debate around what does the A in AI stand for? I mean, obviously we know that it's artificial, but a lot of big businesses actually refer to it as augmented intelligence, not artificial intelligence, in the sense that it's not there to replace the human mind, is it? It's there to augment it and to enhance what we're doing. And I guess for businesses, it's really important to bear in mind that data point, in the sense that roles aren't going to be displaced, they're just going to be enhanced and augmented by AI. But to get there needs to be a firm grip on data.
Yeah, I agree. And I also think it's an exciting but really interesting time, in that I don't think marketers particularly, and sort of software developers and kind of all the technology that goes behind these big organizations and sort of selling products and engaging with consumers online, I think there will be a time where everyone must engage in some form with AI, because if you just look at consumers, for example, I think the average person sort of like flits between like 5 or 6 different social channels on their phone or whatever device they're using. And each of those channels requires kind of tailored content from the brand. So unless you're going to hire an army of content creators, you're going to need to kind of invest to be able to recreate that content, tailor it specifically. So yeah, to your point, it's not about taking over. It's about being able to scale efficiently. And yeah, get to better grips with your data. There are so many different data points that an organization has on one customer. So being able to kind of lean into sort of, technology that enables you to kind of get to grips with those and give you an actual clear kind of narrative of what that means can only be a benefit, right?
Yeah, and then I guess that feeds quite nicely into our third key theme, which, I mean, I think for anyone who's seen any of the Terminator films will know there's almost an inherent fear that at some point AI will become fully sentient and take over. But I mean, a refreshing message that kept popping up from senior business leaders, politicians, inventors, policymakers, was that actually people are so important in this whole process. And you can't enact any of this digital transformation, this digital change, without great data teams, without great marketeers, and without great people at the core of your business, which was really great to hear, wasn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I'm really ashamed to say that I haven't seen Terminator.
You're missing out. You're missing out big time.
I was more of when it comes to Arnie, I was more of I think it was Twins, that film.
Yeah, Danny DeVito.
Classic.
Danny DeVito.
But no, I think to your point, I think it's a really good point. It's an exciting time in terms of enabling and kind of scaling sort of human creativity and innovation, sort of giving us the tools to do that. But also I think obviously where the attention is needed, and I think it's an exciting opportunity. It's for where leaders, be it politicians, innovators, whoever, all need to come together and make sure that it's kind of governed and managed in a really healthy and kind of positive way. I think that was one of the things that kind of Rishi Sunak highlighted in the opening statement. All of these things have potential, and there's bound to be scaremongering. But it also presents a really exciting opportunity for the industry to kind of come together and most importantly, like focus on the user, the customer, the consumer, whatever you want to call them.
So I guess taking stock of the 3 key themes that we've covered, I guess first of all, we've got that point around despite everything that's going on in the tech space, legacy tech is still a massive asset and still something that's super important for businesses to keep a hold of and keep innovating with.
Yeah.
And then we've got...
but it's often not seen as that, which is really interesting.
Why do you think that is? Why is that?
Well, from our experience, like I said, we can't speak for all businesses and organizations, but from our experience, I think digital transformation, if you think about the last 10 years, and now I am showing my age, but digital transformation over the last 10 years has been so incredibly fast paced. So it's almost like you just have to continuously be innovating. And all of that kind of amalgamates, you have these like legacy tech systems, which have sort of layers upon layers upon layers upon layers. And then you've got these huge organizations that are working within them. And it comes a point where potentially that can be quite restrictive, because you've got this system that's been, built 20 years ago and slowly been built upon like building blocks. But actually, that's where kind of good growth tech comes in, and we can kind of unpick those and use sort of what's in there already. I don't know that there are many organizations or kind of tech providers that can do that. So I think that's why it's particularly interesting. And we're definitely in a place where we can kind of help redefine legacy tech as less of a heavy weight around a kind of CEO's shoulders and more of an opportunity for growth and for capturing revenue.
I guess hopefully reduce some of those anxieties and fears around AI and everything else going on in the space.
Yeah, definitely.
So that was our first key theme. And then we had that second one around how there's no point really innovating and throwing everything in the kitchen sink at AI and getting it into your business without getting your data ducks in a row, really, is there? You've got to have a grip on that before you truly innovate in a whole entire new space. Then finally, there was that third really, really interesting, really refreshing point around the value of people and how digital transformation is more than just digital transformation. It's organizational, it's people transformation. You've got to have the right teams in there.
Yeah.
Sophie, keen to get any closing remarks, any last thoughts from you in terms of what's going to stick around in your head that we heard. I mean, it was a fantastic week. It was jam-packed full of content and speakers and ideas. What are going to be some of the things that you really take away and are thinking about over the coming weeks, months, and maybe even years?
I think it was, like I said, it was really invigorating to be around so much energy when it comes to kind of innovation and technology and kind of pushing things forward. And I think a huge part of London Tech Week was, the bringing AI and machine learning and kind of new innovation into the NHS and into learning about healthcare, like women's health in particular. All of that stuff I just find extremely inspiring, and it kind of fills me with faith that that's where we're kind of using technology. And I think also it was really enlightening for me. I'm a marketeer. I'm quite a creative person. I lean into tech where I can. But I think it was really interesting to me to hear kind of on more than one occasion that kind of chief technology officers and tech teams, developers, they're no longer the guys that are kind of kept in the basement. There was, I think it was the CMO of Lenovo who mentioned, the tech team aren't just the guys there to fix your laptop anymore. They're literally kind of the driving force behind getting your brand in front of people, getting people to engage with your proposition, getting people to buy your products. So again, I thought that was really, really interesting, and something that I'll definitely be leaning into. And yeah, just keeping a really close eye on how brands are using AI and bringing it into their organization and what opportunities they represent, and looking forward to chatting to them about what we can do and how we can facilitate that.
Perfect. Well, Sophie, it's been great to recap and reflect on what was really a great week of insight and ideas. And it does feel like while the buzz around things like metaverse and Web3 has maybe died down a little bit, the buzz around AI and digital transformation is certainly here to stay for the long term. Sophie, it's been a real pleasure speaking to you. So thank you very, very much for your time.
You too. Thanks, George.
Now, as always, we may have left you with answers, we may have left you with questions, but either way, it would be great to hear from you. We're Good Growth, a data and technology business trusted by global brands to grow market share and profitability of e-commerce and digital channels. You can email us at inquiries@goodgrowth.co.uk or have a look at our website, which is goodgrowth.co.uk. Thanks for listening.